Our next guest is a financial analyst who predicted the financial crisis and the demise of Fannie and Freddie years before they happened. He's a proponent of a loaded word that politicians on Capitol Hill don't want to say. It's the A word, austerity. Jim Rogers is the founder of the Rogers International Commodity Index and calls himself a free market follower of the Austrian School of Economics. Jim, thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch today, all the way from Singapore. So you travel all over the world. You predicted the crisis that we're in now. You predicted it long before anybody else has. Now, from 10,000 miles away from New York, you're hearing the word austerity. From whom are you hearing it? And what should Americans be looking forward to?
Judge, I'm not hearing it from Washington, D.C., that's for sure, but I am hearing it from many people in Europe, many people in Asia who understand you cannot spend money you don't have. You cannot print money you don't have. You can do it, but you can only do it for so long. You ruin your currency, you ruin your economy, and you ruin your country.
The argument that you make is so sound and so sensible. The government thinks it can solve a problem caused by too much borrowing and spending with more borrowing and spending. The government has hundreds of billions of dollars in its bank accounts from a stimulus program it passed in February. It hasn't even hired the people to write the checks to spend the money. Yet earlier this week, the President of the United States said he wants to spend another $50 billion of money we don't have to repave highways and roads and other infrastructure in the United States. Where are they going to get the money from? How are they going to pay it back? And why don't they understand that every time they do this, they devalue the cash that we already have?
Judge, the United States is now the largest international debtor nation, not in the world, in the history of the world. No country's ever run up so many debts as we have in the U.S. This is not a problem for our children and grandchildren, Judge. This is a problem for you, for me, and our parents. You know, this is a problem that's hitting all of us in the face right now. Those guys in Washington just worried about the next election. They worried to make sure that they stick around. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They care about getting their next paycheck and not whether the country survives.
If you were the Treasury Secretary for a month, or if the President called you up and asked for you for his advice and said whatever you told him, he'd follow it, what would you do? What would you tell him to do?
Well, I would tell him to cut spending so dramatically that it would make people's ears burn. You've got to cut spending horribly. You've got to cut taxes. If I were running things, we would take an axe to all spending. We would cut it, and then we would cut taxes. We would let the American people decide what to do with their money. We know better. Listen, I know a lot better what to do with my money than Bill Clinton or George Bush or what's his name, Obama. No, I know better, and everybody watching your show does too. You've got to cut spending, you've got to cut taxes, and you've got to get rid of the Federal Reserve, who keeps printing money and running up big debts.
Give us a little 30-second economics lesson. Why is it more productive in the long run for the people to have $50 billion of their own dollars and spend and invest it how they want than for the government to take it from them or borrow it in their names and spend it the way the government wants?
Judge, you have to have people who save and invest to have a thriving economy. In Washington, they're destroying the saving class. People who save money and have done the right thing for the past 10 years are suddenly being smashed because they get zero interest on their savings. When you destroy the savings class, you destroy the future of your country.
What's your prediction for the next year and a half in the United States of America if the government does not lower taxes and does not stop spending?
It's the same thing that's been happening for the past year and a half, Judge. Nothing. It doesn't get better. You see, they say they've spent all this money and printed all this money. It's done no good. Unemployment is higher now than it was when Mr. Obama took office. Everything has gotten worse. It's going to continue to get worse. And our currency is going to continue to weaken. Interest rates are going to go higher. We're going to have more inflation. We're not going to have a pretty picture.
Jim Rogers, all the way from Singapore. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Watch. Here's something you have a right to know about the Constitution. Under the Constitution, Congress has the power to coin money. For over 100 years, the government understood that all money would either be made of or backed by silver or gold. The states cannot issue paper money, but they can coin money as long as it's made of silver or gold. So can the federal government issue paper money that is not backed by silver or gold? Most people take it for granted today that it can, but it wasn't always the case. The Supreme Court initially said it could not when Lincoln issued worthless paper during the Civil War, but it later changed its mind. Imagine how much more stable the dollar would be today if the Supreme Court had followed the Constitution, if the Supreme Court stopped the Federal Reserve from creating paper money out of thin air, and if the Supreme Court held Congress to a gold or silver standard.